All right. Hey, welcome back to the GO4CEO channel. The architect of transformation. That's what I'm calling this guy. You don't get a day named after you in two cities by accident. Bishop Kevin Foreman has empowered leaders across continents and built Harvest Church from the ground up and shaped communities through mentorship and practical leadership. So today, he's here to share how transformation truly happens. Bishop Foreman, thank you so much for coming on the GO4CEO channel. How are you?
Oh, listen, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the conversations that you're having. Conversation can be a great catalyst for transformation. So thank you for having me. Excited about what we're going to get into today.
Well, I love energy, right?
Yeah.
The transference of energy, a guy that I follow,
Yeah.
Ed Mylett, talks about it all the time. And
Uh,
and in that vein of how either you're on stage, you're on camera, you're in front of someone, people are feeling your energy.
yeah.
And we were talking off camera a little bit about my experience this last weekend. But I'm very impressed by, obviously the transformative things that you're teaching out there in the marketplace, and obviously having built your church from the ground up. And I'd love to get into it. So give us a little bit about background. Were you kind of totally out in the different atmosphere of this world and
Right.
got into it and introduced to it? What's kind of the background so we can kind of share the rest of the story?
Yeah, let's go back. So the joke is I was born with the Bible in a briefcase. I came out of my mom's womb with a Bible in a briefcase. I had this affinity towards business, entrepreneurship, and being industrious. And so I started my first business when I was 12. By 21, I built Denver's largest Black-owned mortgage company.
Well,
At the same time, I started in ministry at 12. I started as a drummer. I was horrible. I couldn't keep the beat. Like that's the job of the drummer, to keep the beat. Couldn't keep the beat, but I got much better. I improved my craft and was eventually inducted into the Colorado Gospel Music Hall of Fame, did choirs, wrote music, wrote songs, produced music, the whole nine. And so they used to call me Denver's Kirk Franklin, for those familiar with Kirk Franklin. The joke is, though, I'm taller than Kirk. So I got a few inches on Kirk in terms of height, but nonetheless, that was always my background. I always saw that there was this convergence of spirituality and success. And I think many people see them as either or, not both and. But there's this scripture that says, Revelation 5:10, that we're made to be kings and priests, spiritual and successful, in one man or woman, or two realms, a spiritual realm, a realm of success. And so that's how I've always lived my life. We built the church from scratch with nothing. We built every business that I've built from scratch with nothing. And I used to sometimes look back and say, why wasn't something handed to me? And I discovered I was given a gift. I was given the gift of having to start with nothing so that I would never be afraid of nothing, so that I could conquer everything.
well,
Yeah.
that's a deep line right there, right?
Yeah.
So help me understand, like obviously, you felt this calling from a very beginning part, like you
Yeah.
said, out of the womb,
Yeah.
briefcase. What'd you say, briefcase and what else?
Bible in a briefcase. one,
Bible.
one in one hand, the other in the other. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and honestly, people struggle with that, right? That's an area that people struggle with. So it's interesting that you had that calling,
Yeah.
that seed of greatness built into you and kind of planted. What would you say are some of those things that, if people don't have that seed or understanding, that the way that you bring them to maybe, flourish in their next level scenario?
Yeah, I often say it like this: wherever you're attacked, that's where you're anointed. And let me take it out of a spiritual context. Wherever you're antagonized, wherever you're attacked, that's where the treasure is. In other words, that's where your greatest value add is. And so, whenever I'm trying to get people to navigate to what are they supposed to do? Questions of purpose and identity, and am I supposed to be doing this? Is this the right path for me? These are questions that everybody, I don't care if you're the CEO, I don't care if you're the janitor, I don't care if you're just getting started, I don't care if you've been doing it for years. These alignment questions are questions that often pop up. And they're great questions. Most people look at the areas where they experience trauma or difficulty or issues, and they typically want to run from them.
Mm.
I believe the difference. I believe that you should run toward that, because the reason you've had issues in that area, that's a sign to you. That's like an alarm going off saying, this is where your value is. This is where your treasure is. So as a kid, if I was to detach my birthing, the Bible in a briefcase, if I was to look at areas where I had this attack, or I had this drama or these trauma or these issues. One was that I was born in Denver but raised in Memphis. This part of Memphis was called Orange Mountain. it immediately post slavery in America and during the era of Reconstruction, it was one of the many they call Black Wall Streets around the nation. Well, over time, like many of those areas, due to policy and very systemic and intentional policies, those areas began to deteriorate and to begin to come up with all of the plight that accompanies a lot of inner city areas. So I saw drugs, I saw gangs, I saw drive-by shootings. I saw that there was a choice that I had to make, and I was going to determine, was I going to be what I beheld, or was I going to be something different? So that was the attack. The attack was environment. So I made a choice that since I was put around an environment there was instability, saw lots of challenges, that I was going to be the opposite of that. I grew up in a household where my mom, an amazing mom, she's my greatest fan to this day. Any accomplishment, I get a text from her, you did amazing. I mean, it's amazing. And a couple of times she didn't text me and I text her back and say, what's going on? Are you okay? What's going on? And, but my stepfather, for those familiar with the Ike and Tina Turner story, that movie, that's how my stepfather was. He was a womanizer. He was an abuser. He was a man that had so much potential, but he never walked in it. What was that? That was a gift for me to see. Don't be this man. So when I'm helping people to unlock the things that they are to do or the areas they're to dig deeper in, it's normally the areas that our human nature says run from. I say run to it, investigate it.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean, look, it takes sometimes some work to
Yeah,
be introspective, right?
yeah,
To be reflective.
yeah,
And as I shared offline, this weekend was one of those times for me. But admittedly, it's not been something that has been a skill set for me, of being
yeah,
reflective. I kind of am the guy that runs through the wall and goes, "All right, that kind of hurt, but I
yeah,
learned a little something." So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and being a girl dad, I've had to tone down that run through the wall. I'd have to be more nurturing, be the one that checks the wall first and
Yeah,
see that type of thing. So
yeah,
awesome. Look, the business of the church, right?
yeah.
And growing something from ground up. I'd love to get a little bit of sense of kind of what were those beginning days, and then obviously what you've been able to flourish and starting from Colorado. And I think you said Georgia now.
Yeah, Atlanta, Georgia. We just moved our headquarters 10 months ago to Atlanta. So I'll start with where we're at to and then go back. There's lots of ways to measure efficacy, success, et cetera, especially when you're talking about church. Many people don't want to deal with the realities that the church has a business aspect to it. If you don't run it well, Jesus isn't signing checks for light bills. Like that's not, you can't call the internet provider and say, we just praying for grace and mercy. Like they want their check, they want their money. There's a business aspect to ministry. The gospel is free, but to get it to people isn't. It requires good business principles. So we've seen now almost 13,000 professions of faith. At the time you and I are having this conversation this year alone, we've seen over 1,700 just this year alone. The time you and I are having this conversation, we are a 100% totally debt-free organization. We owe nobody anything. But that's great. But then we also measure, well, what is our impact in the community? Over 250,000 articles of clothing given away, almost 200,000 pounds of food given away, almost 30,000 toys given away. The list goes on. I'm saying that to say that we've accomplished some things. And the way I like to view it is that we're just getting started. Like my energy is always like I'm a kid fresh out the gate. Like we're just getting started, that type of attitude. But when we started from scratch with nothing. No one gave us anything. I made reference earlier to some of my business success and one of my first, most very successful businesses, rather, in the mortgage business. Well, by the time we started the church, the mortgage industry had went through essentially a full scale collapse, and I had to. I had just opened a brand new office. I had to shut that down. Primary office had to shut that down. So now my home office became my office. The industry was going through a complete reshaping, a complete collapse, and literally it happened over the weekend. That Friday, I left thinking, man, this has been another amazing month. We were doing more revenue in one month than most people do in a lifetime, and then by Monday, done. I mean, it was that dramatic of a change. And so you would think that if I'm going to start a church, that God would have me to do that at the zenith, at the height of when all of that's happening. That's not when it happened. It was after all of that. I mean, the industry collapses and there's like, okay, let's start this church. Start a church. Like, why would you not have me to do this at the zenith? And then Denver's 46 out of 50 for lowest church attendance in the nation. So it's like the worst place. So we're talking to CEOs. It's like the worst place. All of your market data says, don't do it here. Like there's no model that shows that it will work, but we made it work. There's no model that says it will happen, but we made it happen. And I think that goes back to one of the gifts that I was given as a child, which again looked like negative things, but I leaned into those things. Looked like impossibilities, but I leaned into that, and really crossed lines and broke barriers and what have you. So those early days, nobody helped us. Nobody gave us anything. We didn't have support from an outside organization. Nobody gave us a piece of tissue. Nobody helped us, but it taught me how to, I'll go back to that saying. It taught me how to start with nothing. So I was afraid of nothing so that I could accomplish and conquer everything. So that's my gift. My gift is you can drop me in the middle of nothing and I will turn it into something. Doesn't matter what it is. And so we started really measuring how many new 6 and 7 figure earners and executives and entrepreneurs, whatever it might be, that we were creating, because I recognized that many people with strong leadership gifts were drawn to me because strength needs strength, iron needs iron. So the start was literally, when we say from scratch, it's not like, oh, I got a little $1 million loan from my friend, or, so no, when I say from scratch with nothing, that's literally what it was, because no one gave us anything. And my business, remember, it was on the decline. So I was living off of reserves. And I'm ready to tell you that we were able to build, and I was able to build personally back better and stronger than ever before.
Well, what a cool transition, right? Obviously, in a turmoil scenario, in a time that of havoc,
Yeah.
you created some resiliency, right?
Yeah.
And created resources out of resourcefulness.
Yeah.
So a lot of great catchphrases there. Obviously, it's very apparent that your energy is high level. You attract what you are, right, and what you are becoming, right, by putting in the time and the reps for it. So all right, so you start this church, right? And you start, I'm assuming, with your inner circle. You had done so much business that you had some people that were clients, right, from that previous organization that you built. What were some of the things that you started to look at and said to yourself, okay, hey, from a business aspect, the church needs me to do this, and I'm going to attract these people to do X.
Yeah, great question. So we started, I really looked into the network that I had. So, the business aspect of that really, what it did, it gave me the principles, but it didn't necessarily convey to people. That was business, this was ministry, two different worlds in terms of people, but the principles were the same. So I began to coalesce a team around me, same way that I built every other business, coalesce a team and say, all right, what do we need? I think, sometimes we have people who are present, but they don't serve a purpose. What do we need? And I need to make sure what we need is sitting at the table so that everybody is like the Avengers. I need the best of the best in the various areas that they do. I don't need somebody that's trying to become the best. I need the best of the best sitting at the table in whatever area that is. We coalesce that team. We used to meet on Monday nights there was a restaurant, little diner type restaurant, and we would literally take up the whole middle of the diner, and I would make them give us a big rectangle, and I would have my meetings right there. We would eat, and then we would run those meetings, and we did that for months. As we're building that team, we prepared to go towards a launch. The rules are, if you launch big, it solves 90% of your problems. So we launched with over 100 people show up. The rule is only about 50% will come the next week. The only reason we had 100 people that showed up was because I stacked that service with every dancer, every singer, every person, everybody I knew could do something. Like, can you play the clarinet? Come on, you come too. Like everybody. That next week there were 7 people, because most of those people went somewhere else. So, talk about, whoa, what is this? But again, I wasn't afraid of nothing, because I knew how to take nothing and turn it into something. So from there, you take it and you transition that. But one, what do we need sitting at the table? Two, I recognized early on, because we were in an area where there was not a heavily churched area. Like there's some areas you just put out and put, church, and people will show up. You put barbecue restaurant, people are going to show up. You put whatever, they're going to show up. There's other areas where marketing is king. Well, I learned that from my mortgage company, that at the end of the day, marketing was king. Who cares if you got a great product if nobody knows you have a great product? Sometimes executives get so caught up in perfecting the product that the other guy who doesn't have a perfect product but knows how to promote it, he ends up winning. Not because he's better, but because he realized the game. The game was marketing. So we began very early on TV. Like we had a one camera shot. We were going on TV, like going up to ministries, multi-million dollar ministries, and we come on right in between them at a one camera shot. But I said, we're going to work this one camera. So we would, after church, we would get the people to sit together, and we get B-roll, we get B footage of them clapping, responding. If you ever watch church on TV, people responding and clapping and, that type of thing. So I said, go get camera shots. I like re-preach the message, get the B-roll. We hired a girl who had done the graphics for a very large television ministry and all of that. So our productions looked amazing. And so we were 6 months old, but it looked like we had been around forever because I realized that this was about marketing. This was about exposure. So the right people and then the right promotion. And then from there, it really dealt with the right processes. We had to create processes that would get people in and that would allow people to connect. Only 1 out of 4 people, the statistics are going to stick to any church organization. Doesn't matter how good it is. None of that matters. Those are the statistics. So we knew the numbers. And once I knew the numbers, I said, if I want, for example, 1,000 people, 4,000 people have to come through these doors. So we really were able to take sound principles and apply them in this spiritual context because people are people are people.
No, I love the tie, right? And having you on the Go4CEO channel is truly a blessing because you could take it from that sense,
Yep.
right? Knowing your numbers, knowing the analytics. I was thinking while you were sharing, a gentleman that I follow, PBD, Patrick Bet-David, he talks about in the industry of evangelism, in the industry of, of pastors and bishops and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
we need to do a better job
Mm-hmm.
at marketing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'll get a little bit on this route. The Muslim faith seems to be doing a lot of great marketing for them,
Mm-hmm.
and different other faiths, right?
Mm-hmm.
But being a Christian, I really am sold out to like, hey, how do we do that? So I'm super excited to have you on and
Yeah.
very blessed to share this story. So, you
Love
know,
that.
as a business, okay, so made me think 6 months into this,
Yeah.
you're attracting the right people. You went from 100 to 7, and then that next multiplier from whatever that was to 6 months later. What are the ways that a church really creates revenue? Is it truly just donations, or were there other ways that you got into the communities and asked for sponsorships and for donation from businesses, B2B stuff, or maybe a newsletter that had some advertising inside of it? What were some of those creative ways to
Oh, I
create?
love that. Yeah, love that question. So one, obviously, it's the giving of the people who are connected, which is not only a biblical principle, but just if you were to strip that away, if you're receiving benefit, you pay for it, right? If you just strip that away, and I think that's important because sometimes people look at that as it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. If you go to eat at a restaurant, you're receiving benefit, you pay for it. If you go to a therapist, you receive benefit, you pay for it. Counselor, you receive benefit, you pay for it. So if you were to strip away the spiritual principle of it, it's still a natural principle that we all follow every single day, but it is a spiritual principle. So that's number one. Number two, I recognize and realize that we had great ability to have great partnerships and relationships. So one of our very first, was with a very large department store or big box retailer, and they were our first partnership that we created, and it allowed for us to be able to do specific things in the community as it related to outreach, feeding people, clothing people, all of that. So we really expanded that and said, okay, let's really maximize the dollars that we receive for community impact, and let's do that. So at one point, we had Denver's largest food bank. We did the most in terms of individual sites for the Rocky Mountain region than any other church. We
Wow.
did the largest in terms of clothing. Literally, we had, I mean, it was like like a department store in the campus at one point, to where when people needed clothes, boom, here you go, right here. Everything you need, we got it here. And so we created those partnerships. And so from every type of business, and we use those for our big events. Back to school was huge for us. Thousands of people would come out to that. Christmas, huge for us. Thousands of people would come out to that, to where we were, empowering people, giving people what they needed, and being a blessing to the community. We didn't see ourselves as just a church. We saw ourselves as the leader of the city. And so, with that difference in mindset, we saw ourselves as responsible for meeting the needs of people in the city. We'd pick those needs and we'd meet them, or we'd support other organizations that were meeting them rather than recreating what they were doing. Third way, because your question is about revenue, third way is that then we monetize the campus. So we said we got this building that really only gets used 3 days a week: Sundays, Wednesdays for church, Sundays for church, and then Thursdays for production rehearsals. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday during the day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, nothing's happening here other than staff. So we said, let's utilize this facility. So we would build our campuses out such that they were able to be sort of vanilla locations. So it didn't say church on the building. It just said harvest on the building. Well, that could be anything. It said harvest. That was intentional. That was very strategic because we would have corporations that would rent it out. We would have other businesses that would rent it out where perhaps a hotel wasn't the right fit. So hotels would then refer business to our events director. And so we would host events and allow people to rent it out, other churches, et cetera. So we really monetized the building so that it was able to pay for itself in many ways. And I think that's really what we focused on. But there's so many different ways. For us, it was let's go after the low hanging fruit.
Mm. So, and I may have missed this, but the transition of that complete Friday to Sunday, you're out of business in the mortgage world. What was that then the building that you were using and repurposed it, or what was that transition? Just because I want to make sure the audience can hear that.
Sure, no, great question. No, we had to close those offices, and so we weren't able to use those for the ministry. That was down the road. We had to close those offices, and I'll be very transparent with you. I remember going through that experience because I took the whole floor of an office complex and just opened this brand new office, hired tons of new people, and then boom, the industry collapses. And I remember going through that experience and thinking, whoa. And like this is how are we gonna get out of this? I just signed, I think it was probably, I don't know, a 60-month lease or something. I don't know what it was. And it was a very interesting experience. I had never been there. And so I remember going through this experience that felt like, this is the end. It's over. This is the end. It's over. Everything's lost. Everything's defeated. Then I had to close the main office and all of that. It was a very trying and difficult moment. But I've discovered that, valleys, there's a valley between mountains. That's the only way you get to another mountain is you got to go through a valley. So I recognized that valleys are vehicles. So when I had that mindset shift, anytime I hit a valley, I would just move forward and go past that. And so, no, that building was not used for that. Those are two very different things. But I literally had to get rid of it. And I remember thinking, this is it. This is over. How will I ever recover? But I did because I had a mindset shift. Sometimes the things that we look at as negatives are really gifts to us. And I really began to view it that way. That I have the opposite of paranoia, which is there's this conspiracy against me. I have pronoia, which is there's a conspiracy for me. All of these different things in the world are working together to benefit me.
There's that saying, things happen to you or for you. And it's
Yeah,
mindset, right? It's
yeah,
when it's for you, it's a positive thing. When it's to
yeah,
you, you're feeling like a victim a lot of
yeah,
times, right? So
yeah.
awesome. Well, look, obviously you built another great organization. I would say leadership is a key component. You obviously come through as a very dynamic and engaging leader from just the way you speak. But what were some challenges? What were some things that maybe tested you from a perspective of like, hey, you put this gentleman or this lady in charge of X or Y of the church, and it wasn't working too well. So you had to test your
Mm.
leadership skills
Yeah,
on either getting rid of them or politely asking them to bow down to a different, maybe
yeah,
sector of the business or of the
right.
church. What were some of those dynamics?
Mm. Such an amazing question. So, I came up with the three T's: train, transfer, terminate.
Mm.
Sometimes people don't do well because they've not been trained to do well. Sometimes we assume that people can lead because they say they can. We assume that people can do it because they say that I did this over here, I did this over here. So I had to go through that process. And I'll be honest, I did very transparently. I often did too much training. I would make people so good that sometimes they would think they'd always been that good, and think, oh well, I can go whatever, and sometimes those people didn't really last, because sometimes if you put a gallon worth of value into a pint worth of person, you will always overpour. And that's not to say people are less than people. It's just everybody has different capacity. Some people can oversee thousands of people. To some people, they need to oversee one person. To some people, they need to be over projects because they have no clue how to deal with people. It's just recognizing people's capacity. And I, early on, I didn't do as great of a job at recognizing capacity. I thought everybody could be stretched, and that's not true. But my three T's: train, transfer. Sometimes you've got great people, they're just in the right seat. It's kind of like if you've got somebody that's an usher, and they're on time, they're consistent, they're faithful, they're doing all of the right things, but they don't like people. So you can't be a mean usher. Sit over here. Instead of, you can't be a mean usher. So we need to transfer you. You've got great skills, but we don't need you interacting with people. Like we need you to be security, because you can be a little rougher. We need you to do something else. We need to transfer you. And then the third T, terminate. Sometimes people don't have the right skills, nor do they have the right mindset, nor do they have the right heart. It's just not a fit. And sometimes one of the most difficult things to do is say, this isn't a fit, this isn't working out. And what made that a challenge in business, I never had that problem. I'll be honest, as a pastor and in ministry and a bishop, which is just a pastor to pastors, every general leads a general, every leader leads a leader, every coach needs a coach. That became much more difficult because I began to view people through a paternal lens instead of an executive lens. So I just like you just mentioned a moment ago, being a girl dad, now you're like, okay, I can't run through the wall. Let me test the wall. Let me do that. Imagine transferring that to your business or your organization. You're now treating people in a way that you are helping to, almost enable some of their ineptitude or their lack of performance or what have you. So I had to learn a lot of lessons, but there's lots of dynamics there. And I had to realize that you have to separate the two. And sometimes the most difficult for me to do was to separate the two, because I'm like, okay, we've got to make this change because the organization needs it, our growth needs it. But, there's this human and there's this humanity side of it too.
So you've given us an incredible voyage, right, throughout this conversation, and really the planting of seeds that God put in you, being born with the briefcase in the Bible,
Yeah.
and then putting yourself in a entrepreneurial spirit where you built a great organization, but collapsed very quickly through some unseen outside forces.
Yeah.
But then you pivoted,
Yeah.
right, and now you got into a different industry and a different mindset, and went back to the roots, really, of having that Bible in your hand and being able to profess, God's word, and then lead people into an organization and build of the business,
Yeah.
of the church. So when you think about this, what has that done also? Are you doing some coach of coaching?
Yeah.
Are there some areas that now that you built a solid foundation and you've got some great leadership, I'm assuming, within the church, and even with the move, what are you doing now also to create some other avenues?
Oh, great question. So one is it's the community we're building called Kings and Priests, where it goes back to what I was. I know I'm not the only one that was like that, where there is this affinity towards success, this affinity towards spirituality, and many times you don't have the language to give to it and know how to navigate it. And so even some of my for-profit stuff now, which mostly is private equity acquisitions, things like that, building that community to show people how to build faster. Once you've started lots of things, that's fun. But one of the things I'm into now is just buying what somebody else built.
Mm.
That's much more exciting to me these days. Like after you've started from scratch several times, that's great. Now I like to buy what other people built, help improve it, help make it better if necessary. But it's a much faster way to get to productivity and results, etc. So we've got that community. In addition to that, I still do one-on-one coaching. As full as my schedule is, I still do one-on-one coaching. I really have this desire to see people go to the next level, whether that's six figures, seven figures, beyond. So it's amazing because we've had several of my mentees that have literally crossed over into that seven-figure space. One lady, she started her business. We planned it from scratch together, and she's on year three, and she just did. I think she just exceeded 5 million, and which is fantastic. Another one of my mentees, His story is amazing. He had came out of prison and turned his entire life around. And his business did, I think, a few years, just a couple of years back, he exceeded 7 million. Another one of my mentees, same thing, came to me. He was doing 500,000 a year. Last year he did 8 million. So it's amazing to see. There's tons of other stories, but it's amazing to see. I see the money as a resource. It's a tool. It's not a source. When you're empowered financially, you can empower others financially. And so I do that coaching and make that available to people. I'm an author. We've got books. To me, my life is to change the lives of other people. So if it's going to do that, I have a green light unless God gives me a red light.
I love it, man. I'm getting jacked. So
Yeah.
it's very exciting to hear that, especially, with the commonality of background and
Yeah.
spirituality and stuff. And I love that combination of, you said, using the spiritual world, right, and using your business world and understanding. I've had this in my mind and in my heart. To me, kingdom-driven people that are making a ton of money can do great things,
There it
right?
is right there.
When the money's in the wrong hands, that's why there's bad things going on,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And manipulation and all these types of things that are greed, based in the seven deadly sins, right? So
Yep.
super, super excited that a guy like you is in that realm. And man, let's all make more money, because I feel like Jesus talked about money
Yeah.
many, 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 many times. Yet there are some naysayers of that and try to downplay it. But again, if it's in our hands,
Yep.
kingdom-driven people, we can do great things with it, right? So
There it is.
I love it. I love it. So look, obviously the business of the mortgage, the business of the church, the business of coaching, and the things that you've been able to do now to empower others. The way that we end our interviews are through CEO, right? So
Mm.
client experience, which in this one we're going to change a little bit, and I'd love for you to kind of give a perspective of leading a church and people coming into it, and what should they expect going to
Mhm.
Harvest now, especially
Mhm.
with this new location and new planting in Georgia. Number two will be engagement, and I'll kind of prep you on that one. But from that perspective, from the coaching perspective, from what you individually do to the church, what should people expect working with you and your organizations?
Love it. Number one, they should expect results. Everything I do is results driven. I hate fat in the sense of, a lot of the fluff and things that come with it. I'm about results. I'm like ABC 1, 2, 3. When you come into church, you're going to be given a message that's going to help you give results. You're going to receive love, regardless of your race, color, background, socioeconomic status. None of that matters. When you step into our environment, when you interact with my people, it's important to me that you felt loved, you felt received, and that you were given practical tools to get results. Secondly, what people should expect in any experience is that there's going to be a sense of revelation. Revelation is how information applies to my specific situation. And so to me, you can get a lot of data, you can take lots of notes, but if I don't know how this applies to me, if I can't use it, it's worthless to me. It's just, I know a lot. And the Bible says knowledge puffs up. Just knowing things doesn't mean anything. It just makes you hot air. Revelation says, I know what to do with this now. This is I get it. Okay, that makes sense. You should expect results and expect revelation. And then I'll just give a third R just to keep it, that's the preacher in me. I'll give a third R. They should expect something that's real and relatable. I don't like things that are presented in a way. I remember growing up in church and growing up just in life and just feeling like I would hear people talk, hear people speak. I'm like, oh, that just sounds so far off. Like I'll never be able to do that. I'll never be that spiritual. I'll never be that deep. I'll never be that. It's going to be real and relatable, regardless of where a person is. So those 3 R's.
Well, and I love it. That's one of the reasons I started Go4CEO right in the pandemic. I saw some of my buddies in restaurants and other businesses, have a tough time.
Yep.
And I thought to myself, I don't necessarily want to interview Mark Cubans of the world. Maybe one day he'll be on the Go4CEO channel. But as an example, I wanted to interview the bishop,
Yeah.
right? Right. The gentleman that was a body shop owner that did
Yeah.
3 million and was such an integral part of his community or her community,
Man. Yeah.
and doing some things. And that's what hopefully we built with the Go4CEO movement. So awesome. I will mention selfishly the book here. I loved that you talked about alignment. And if you look, it's like the sign of the cross, right? It's the
Yeah.
alignment of where you're at, right? And in chapter 2, I love that you took those principles and aligned with the right people and put yourself in the right scenarios to then impact and make power out of that. So Last one, or the second one is E for engagement. So out of
Mm,
CEO, right? So engagement is all about like, hey, what do you do as a leader to engage with
mhm,
vendors that come in to clean the
mhm,
church, as an example, right?
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
people that service the food and catering that you may do.
mhm,
The leadership that you have. Do you
mhm,
take them on retreats? Are you a person that likes to have dinners with them,
mhm.
celebrations, holiday, now coming up with these opportunities. So engagement, tell us what your resounding truth is about engagement and how you do business.
You know what? I love that. And my answer is probably going to be a little bit different than some. Consistency is the way I engage. I've discovered that we live in a culture where most people are inconsistent. They'll do something for a little bit and drop off, do something for a little bit and drop off. This week we're doing this week we're doing that. Consistency is the engagement because consistency builds trust. And so
Mm.
what I've always endeavored to do is people know Bishop, if he says this happening on Tuesday at 2, it's happening on Tuesday at 2. Now, whatever fight we had to go through to get there, we're gonna go through that fight to get there. But the key is that consistency is part of one of the ways that I engage because it gives a level of predictability and trust that people can then say, you know what, everything else in the world may be going like this, but I know him and I know this organization. They're going to remain consistent. That's number one. Number two, I look for ways to personalize my experience with people. I discovered that dinners, those types of things, those work great in certain contexts because of the size of our organization and the fact that it's spread out over many different places. What we discovered that sometimes works better is when I can have the personalization of experiences. So, for example, someone may send in a note, something happened. I'm going to see that. I get notified about every single thing. Now, you're talking about our database is over 16,000 people. So, if there's somebody that has something happen in their life and it triggers a response, they're going to get a response. They're going to get a call, they're going to email, they're going to get on behalf of Bishop Foreman, we've created a system to try to engage people and personalize their experience as much as possible so that they're aware and that they know that they matter, because that's really important to me. Other than that, people just feel like a number, and so that's really, really important to me. Even when social media, I'm responsive. It may take me a minute because I get 300 or 400 messages on Instagram a day alone, but it may take me a minute. But I like to be responsive. Last way, in terms of that engagement, is I really like to find out what the needs of people are. So our app is actually one of the best ways that we do that. And I can get real-time feedback through our app, through our text family, through several other means that we have so that they have a voice and a say in what we're going to do. So for me, those kept me from feeling like, because sometimes you can put a pressure on yourself that I got to do all of these things. I said, I can't have that pressure. There's one me and there's thousands. So what I have to do is say, okay, what can I do well? And let me do that.
Yeah, no, that's enormously strong in the way that you've settled and put a concrete, I guess, base of how you do things, right?
Yeah.
And approach things. So last one is operational excellence. When you think
Mm,
about all the tools, and now AI coming into
yeah.
play and some of the things that can sometimes, probably make it less impersonal, but a lot more touches.
Yeah.
And human beings love the touch, right?
Yep.
In sales 101, I always teach, right? Like, hey, I don't care who you are, you have to touch someone in a creative way 7 to 8 times, right? We learned that
Yep.
through sales 101. But, now it's interesting. How do you keep that personalization with that realization of touching, right? So, from an optimal standpoint, from an operation standpoint, what are the tools that you guys are using in the church, in your coaching, and
Yep.
other ways to stay connected and work with your organizations?
You really hit it. One is AI. So I'm going to be honest. I remember about maybe 2 years ago when ChatGPT and other things were kind of really becoming a thing. I had a friend of mine, and he would say, "Oh, I was on chat. I was on chat. I was on chat." And I don't know what it is about me. As much as I like technology, sometimes new technology, it's almost like I just figured out the last thing. Just let me focus on this for a minute. And so he would talk about it. I'd say, "I'm not interested in that." I said, "Don't. I'm not interested. I'm interested." Then I started using it. And I said, "Oh, I'm very interested." And then I started seeing how effective it could be. And I got very interested. And so AI has actually helped us, to your point, to create way more ways that just speed things up. It's helped with speeding things up. It doesn't take away the necessity of a human. It just speeds up what a human's able to do. So that's number one. Number two, operationally, we were able to see that a lot of what church did, and this move has been great at that. A lot of what we did and a lot of what churches do, period, it's not necessary. It's just stuff you do because you've been doing it, but it really doesn't matter. So operationally, we've been able to refine and to define, and we've been able to really focus on, so what are the things that matter most to people? Let's give them that. If people are coming to us for steak, let's have the best steak instead of saying, look at our amazing daiquiri bar. That's not what they're coming to you for. And so we really were able to refine, cut out a lot, do things differently, and see that we're reaching more and more and more people. And so, literally every day, we literally grow every single day. And I think that's because we were able to just cut some fat away and focus on the main things, make the main things the main things.
So, and just to go a little bit deeper,
Yeah,
what are some of the tools? Like, are you guys using Monday? Are you using a certain CRM? Are you
yeah.
using, some of those tools? Are you using Slack to work with your leadership group? Just to give us a little bit extra there.
Sure, sure. Great question. So I like to keep it simple. So really, we use the Google Office, that whole suite of products and that Google admin panel. So they manage our emails, Google Meet, Google Chat, all of that. And then we use our, what in the church world, CRM is called Planning Center Online. It's essentially all of what a CRM in the business world would be. It's the exact same thing, just retrofitted for a church. So that's giving, that's scheduling, that's all of the different things that happen with that. We utilize that, and then we also, just regular email. To be honest, emails for me became a way for me to create this checklist of things, and I don't like more than 5 emails in my inbox. And so we built organizationally in such a way to where, since a lot of it, because I like to be involved in things, my face is on 99% of everything, and it's me preaching, it's me, all of that. So to me, I want to know what's being said. It's got my face on it. What's happening? That I learned that there's a pastor, Joel Osteen, and he said anything that has his face on it, he wants to know what they're doing and what they're saying. And I think that's important. It's not like I'm just hiding behind some desk signing, annual statements, that type of thing. Like, I'm the face of the organization. And so, email to me was the easiest and most efficient way to communicate. Whereas even if I'm at a meeting, I'm responding to emails. I'm on phone calls all day, but I'm still responding to emails. When I'm exercising, what am I doing? Responding to emails. When I'm at the gym, well, after a rep, after a set, what I do, I pick up the phone, I respond to an email. So we like to keep it really pretty simple, even down to our website, our store. We just outsourced all of that to Fourth Wall is the company that we use, and that, which has been a great way to outsource that. It took production off of us. It took distribution off of us. It took a lot of things off of us, and we were able to outsource that. So going back to that whole thing of what can we do to be more operationally efficient, to be the best stewards of the resources we have.
Well, look, man, I've had a phenomenal time, Bishop Foreman.
Likewise.
Like, man, it's just so cool to meet you, and what a great avenue, right? Having a podcast 5 years ago started, having interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people. When I saw Bishop Kevin Foreman, I'm like, wow, I don't know why he wants to be on my podcast, but now I know, right? And
Yeah.
it's a divine situation to be
Yes,
able to
sir.
put you on here, and excited for other people to know about you, from at least from our world, and obviously expand everything that you're doing, because we need to put you in more places and more faces, right? All that type of
I love
stuff. So,
that. I love that. Thank you for
so
having me.
what is the best way for people to get a hold of you, or way that they can interact with your organizations so that they can start to see and learn more about you guys?
Absolutely. Bishopforeman.com, Foreman.com. That'll get them the books, that'll get them coaching. They can find out more about the church, everything that we do, the community I mentioned, all of that's there. Bishopforeman.com. On social, it's all at Bishop Foreman, Foreman. If you go to TikTok, look for the blue check. All of mine are verified. All of my profiles are verified, but look for the blue check. I have over 100 fake profiles on TikTok. I like to give that disclaimer because sometimes people say, is this you? The one that, no, that's not me. Sometimes the fake profiles actually have more views than the real one, but I say, you know what, that's okay. We'll let them do it. We'll help. I got a free street team is the way I consider it. So, but at Bishop Foreman, and let me just say thank you for having me. As I mentioned to you before we got on, I believe that great conversations can become catalysts to transformations. And so, what you're doing, only eternity will tell the lives you impacted, because often, sometimes the people you have the greatest impact on are silent. They don't leave a review. They don't send an email. They don't necessarily say thank you, but you change their lives forever. So, thank you for what you do.
Wow. Well, that you just gave me chills because that is so true, and I've had to learn it more and more.
Right.
And I think in this social world, you get caught up on the vanity, right?
Yeah.
Like, how many likes and clicks and views and all that stuff. And we're a humble, smaller channel, but I feel, are making the right type of impact,
Yes.
and having the right type of people on. So thank you
Yes.
so much, Bishop.
My
We
pleasure.
look forward to having you on in the future.
Sounds
Go for Show
great.
channel. Click the subscribe channel. Also follow Bishop Foreman. Check out his website. Check out the church and everything he's doing in Georgia. And I'm assuming that there's still the planted seeds out there out in Colorado as well. If you're in the Colorado area, the Georgia area, or anywhere in the world, that you
Yep.
can look up and see some of the teachings and ways that he could help you. So thanks so much. Have a great rest of the day, and keep rolling.
You too.